Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives, and today we're going to be continuing our discussion of the Electroverse storyline as we take a look at Web Warriors number 4. Now, last time on Web Warriors! Sadly, things were not going so well for our team of web-headed weirdos, as while the Web Warriors were in the Egyptian universe investigating the Electros' attack on that world, sadly Loomworld was overrun by them as they wanted to get access to the Great Web. And while the Spideys returned to Loomworld and tried to fend them off, sadly the Electros wound up outnumbering them and forced them to retreat, with Karn getting severely weakened in the battle after the Electros tried to fry him via the web. Thankfully, Karn was able to. Thankfully, they were able to retreat thanks to Karn opening a portal, and the world he sent them to was Earth 803, aka Lady Spider's universe, which is because it's set in the Victorian era, and the most advanced the technology involves steampunk mechanics. Basically, if the Electros came here, they wouldn't have a lot of power. So for now, this is a safe haven. But unfortunately, with the Electros in charge of the Great Web, they cannot traverse between the multiverse, so they're kind of stuck. Thankfully, May Riley wound up finding them and is offering them their home. So while they may have been dealt a heavy blow, they're not out for the count. In the meantime, with Spider-Gwen, well, she came face to face with the head of the Electroverse, Mike Dillon, formerly a CEO version of Electro, now an Electro hive mind by the name of the Battery, who is pretty much just this giant living monstrous beast. It's a giant beast made entirely of electricity, made from the collective minds of various Electros across the multiverse, which Mike implemented to ensure that none of them would be able to take him down if any of the other Electros got smart and tried to stage a coup. While Gwen tried to fight the Battery, well, that was like trying to throw a pebble at a brick wall. It's really not going to do anything. As such, Gwen had managed to do a strategic retreat and realized that if she was going to take the Battery down, she would need allies. And since the Battery said that the Electros were going to take Loomworld, Gwen realized that she needed to get allies from somewhere else. And so, after going back to Moon Electro and pretty much browbeating him into helping her again, he wound up powering up her teleporting device and they wound up traveling to Earth 982, aka the MC2 universe, which, while Mayday was not there, as she was still traveling with the Web Warriors at the time, that world did still have a Spidey there. Specifically, Uncle Ben, the Spider-Man of Earth 3145, who went to live there at the end of Spider-Verse. Which, yeah, he's still ready to kick ass as Moon Electro tried threatening him, and Uncle Ben wound up delivering a swift kick right to his face, knocking him out again, which is where this issue begins. Now, like with the last issue, we got two storylines going on at the same time here. One with the Web Warriors, and once again, one with Gwen and Uncle Ben. So, to try and keep things consistent, I'm going to try and keep them both organized, but things are not... But I apologize if things get a little out of order. So, for the sake of things... Let's start with the Web Warrior side of things, and basically, after Lady Spider wound up meeting up with the Web Warrior, she essentially invited them back to her home, which, yeah, based on what we can tell, it's a big manor. She lives here in solitude, so it's basically a perfect hideout for her. No one bugs her, she can work on her things in privacy, and because she's a techie, she does have access to various bits of, I want to say technology, but mostly it's just stuff that she tinkers with. And it allows her to it's where she works on her gear, improves her trade, and so on and so forth. And so basically, May is pretty much going mi casa es su casa for the Web Warriors until they can get their bearings back, which the Web Warriors are thankful for. But Billy is quick to try and get everyone back on track because the Electroverse now has access to Loomworld, and well, since that's where the Web of Life and Destiny is, that means that the Electros now have free reign of the multiverse. So they kind of need to figure out a way to take them down. As such, they decided they need to get access to whatever resources they can and find a lead on how to stop the Electros. And thankfully, May does have a lead they can follow, citing her encounter with the Black Cat back in issue 1, as well. She was basically distracting Lady Spider from a bank robbery where what was stolen was silver. And since the Electros seem to be stealing silver when May and Gwen encounter them, the Web Warriors are able to put two and two together and realize that the robbery had something to do with the Electros. So they decide that if they want to get any lead on the Electroverse, they need to find Black Cat. The team of Spideys do go out, and thankfully they do manage to catch Black Cat, who, while at first thinking that she can outrun them because she's outrun Lady Spider before, well, this is a team of 6 Spideys from across the multiverse. The Black Cat is skilled in any universe. The Black Cat is a very skilled cat burglar, but these are 6 people with superpowers and who can shoot webs out of the wrist, and one of them has a gun, so she's kind of beaten. As such, once the Spideys catch her, they do ask her what she got out of working with the Electros, but she admits, well, it's nothing really big. For her, it was literally just a one-time job. She had no idea that the people who proposed the job to her were members of the Electroverse. In fact, from her perspective, it was literally just 2 guys approached her and said, hey, we want you to set up a fake robbery over here and try and keep the Spidey of this place busy. Can you do that? And, well, Black Cat obliged, and basically, while they ask, well, how do you contact them, she admits she doesn't know. Again, it was a one-time job. She's not really interested in getting back in contact with these guys. She got what she wanted, so she was pretty much just going to move on. However, the Spideys do ask the Black Cat what her reward was for doing this, and she admits that the people gave her an amulet, which she happens to be wearing on her. As such, the Spideys decide that she doesn't really know anything about the Electroverse, but at the same time, the Electros must have given her that amulet for a reason, so they take the amulet from Black Cat and pretty much just go and send her off to the authorities while they all go back to Lady Riley's mansion, so to speak. As such, while they were away, Pavitr, who actually did kind of stay behind, actually wound up tinkering with some of May's tech, and essentially created, what did he call it? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to remember, because it did have a specific name. It is, what is it? An analytical engine. Basically, it's a device that's supposed to be able to send signals across the multiverse and should be able to activate their communicators. It won't fix the dimensional teleporters on their watches, but it will allow the Spideys to send and receive messages. So, at least that's that. But there's still a hole in that. Basically, in order to send a signal across the multiverse, the machine needs an electric charge, and since this world is set basically in the 1890s, electricity is very hard to come by, and the only person to my knowledge that I could actually do that was this world's Electro, and I doubt that he's even going to help them at all. At best, he's in prison and he doesn't have access to his gear. At worst, he joined the Electro army, is probably off in some other universe doing God knows what. So, yeah, essentially the Spideys are kind of dead in the water. But as they're talking, Ham begins sniffing something, because once the Spideys came back, they put the amulet they got from Black Cat down on the table, and Spider Ham starts to sense smell that something's burning, and it's coming from the amulet. And when he goes to check it out, he discovers something. The amulet has a tiny Electro inside. And once the Spideys hear that, they all immediately start beaming as they realize they now have something to power their machine. In the meantime, I think this is a good place we can cut over to Gwen. As after Ben knocked out Moon Electro, he and Gwen wound up webbing him up and just kind of left him to the side while they were talking. While Ben is happy to help Gwen with what's going on with her, he does say that maybe they should get going on this quick because, well, Mary Jane is out of the house and she doesn't. And basically, they're gonna have to move the supervillain before she gets back, because apparently it's a policy of hers to not just leave supervillains webbed up around the house, so to speak. As such, Gwen does apologize, but she is still trying to think of ways to take everything down. So, hold on one second. Sorry about that, I could hear something in the background. But anyway, yeah. Gwen and Ben are trying to think of strategies to deal with the Electroverse, especially considering the battery, as, well, they can't exactly fight something like him. He is a collective hive mind of Electros, and at this point, and basically, even if they confronted him with the whole team, well, as we established with Gwen, punching this guy is not exactly going to do anything, so they have to find a way to take him down. Of course, as when they're talking about him, they describe him as the supreme Electro intelligence or whatever, and that actually ends up turning a few gears in Gwen's brain. Intelligence. Because she remembers when Moon Electro was ranting at her about how when he and Mike, when he was still Mike, were building this whole operation, how they'd been taking Otto Octavius from across the multiverse and were using them to essentially learn the histories of all these other universes so the Electros can go in prepared, know where they're heading, and so on and so forth. And Gwen thinks that even if they can't take on the battery directly, they can at least neuter the army, so to speak. As such, Gwen goes to Moon Electro and pretty much wants him to give her the coordinates for the universe where all the Doc Ocks are hidden, with Moon Electro at this point being more than willing to comply because he just got socked in the face by 2 different Spideys, and well, he's not exactly doing so well. He's got bruises and he's lost a few teeth, and apparently the Electroverse doesn't have good dental. Cheap bastards. But either way, yeah, he's willing to cooperate. So Ben ends up suiting up into his own Spidey suit, and so Moon Electro takes him and Gwen to the world where they hold all the Auto Octaviuses, which is Earth 112255, I think. And sure enough, Gwen and Ben manage to go in and start kicking ass and manage to take out the Electros guarding the facility. And so Gwen arrives in the room where all the Doc Ocks are, tells them how how the boot heels of their oppressors are gone, how they are free, they can go anywhere, they don't have to listen anymore, blah blah blah. Very much gives this big heroic speech about how they're now free and they can do whatever they want. Only for the Doc Ocks to realize, hey, those are 2 Spider-Men! Kill them! At which point the Doc Ocks immediately try to kill Gwen and Ben, with Ben immediately reminding Gwen that she does know that Otto Octavius in most universes is the bad guy, right? Which, yeah, Gwen did not really think that through, which I guess makes sense, as I think at this point she hadn't encountered her own version of Doc Ock, but then again, she also met the superior Spider-Man, who was a Doc Ock, so, maybe you want to get a good idea. But either way, yeah, Gwen and Ben ends up duking it out with all the Doc Ocks, and while Ben does try suggesting that maybe they could maybe Gwen, I forget who suggested it. While the idea is thrown out that they go back to their Electro and just run away, well, the Doc Ocks are putting up too much of a good fight. Or putting up too good of a fight, and sadly they can't reach him, with Moon Electro actually kind of being happy to be just tied up on the sidelines because, hey, he's watching these 2 Spideys get their asses kicked, so, kind of cathartic. However, in the midst of the battle, a panel in the ceiling opens up, and someone inside urges Gwen and Ben to come into the ceiling, and while they're a little hesitant because they think, well, maybe this is a trap, well, they really don't have any better ideas, so they end up going into the ceiling, and they soon find the person who was urging them to come through. This is... basically, well, it's another version of Doc Ock, but specifically, Octavia Otto is her name. And put simply, she is from another universe where things are reversed, so to speak. Now, it's not just the fact that her world is a mere universe, it's that everything is reversed. Case in point, on her world, Peter Parker is Parker Peters. She is not Spider-Man, she's Spider-Woman, and rather than being one of the city's greatest heroes, Spider-Woman was probably one of the most dangerous killers that world has ever seen. Which brings us to the good Octavia Otto here, as in her reality, she was actually a member of the Young Avengers. Unfortunately, though, was is kind of a keyword here, as like with all the other Otto Octaviuses, she was captured by the Electro Army, who invaded her world and wound up killing all of her friends in order to get to her. And so she's been trapped here working with all the Doc Ocks for several months. And in that time, she's thought about doing an escape plan, but she's never really gone through with it until Gwen and Ben showed up, as once they showed up and Gwen gave her big whole freedom speech, Octavia was able to figure out that they were good versions of Spider-Woman, and so she decided to place her trust in them and not only help them escape, but also have them help her escape. As such, the pair of Spideys and Octavia end up working together and start going through the facility, and Octavia tells them that that if they want to get outside, they should cut through a lab for special projects, which does lead directly to a window outside, and part of the reason they're going there is because it's empty due to all the hijinks that Gwen caused. But as they're going through, Gwen notices something. One of the devices is a helmet, which is supposed to be, hold on, the words are actually in here. I'm just trying to find it. Sorry, again, this is why I need to bookmark this shit. They find a helmet that's supposed to be a teleconsciousness rig. From what I can tell, I think this is supposed to be like I don't want to say spin-off, an offshoot of the device that the main universe Otto Octavius, an offshoot of the device that the main universe Otto Octavius used to swap minds with Peter Parker. Only based on how Gwen sees this, It looks like the device Gwen believes that the device was most likely utilized by the battery in order to absorb Electros into his collective consciousness. And Gwen thinks that she might have an idea how to use it. As such, she ends up taking it with her as she, Octavia, and Ben end up leaving special projects, but sadly, as they get outside, they're ambushed by more of the Doc Ocks. Thankfully, though, that's when the Web Warriors manage to get the communication rig up and running and send out a call to Gwen. Gwen lets them know exactly what's going on and that she has a plan to take out the Electros, but, well, she's kind of pinned down as it is, and they can't exactly go in there guns blazing. So she tells Billy that if the Web Warriors want to help her, then they need to cause a distraction. As such, she says she has a plan. As such, Gwen ends up hanging up on them, and while the Web Warriors can't actually join her because, their dimensional teleporters are not working, Billy thinks that maybe they can provide a distraction for Gwen. And how to do that? They need to utilize this big ass communicator that Pavitr built. As Billy thinks that if Gwen wants a distraction, then they'll give them one. As such, after a few modifications of the device, Billy sends out a message across the multiverse, directly to all the Electros, pretty much telling them that their whole operation has been thrown to the wind, as Gwen has managed to destroy their rig that allows them to map out the multiverse, so now they're just jumping across realities blind, they have no idea where they're going, so on and so forth, and how the Spideys are safe and sound on Earth 803 with the Master Weaver, who weaves the web of life and destiny, who knows the multiversal layout like the back of his hand, and that since the Spideys have access to him, they can go anywhere and anywhen they want, and the Electros should just throw up their hands and give up, because, they have nothing, the Spideys have everything, so, they should back off, yada yada, blah blah blah. It's pretty much just calling the Electros out, and after Billy gives them all this information, he hangs up. Anya, of course, wonders, well, why'd you say all that? Didn't you get a little too much information? But Billy admits that, yeah, that was the plan. Yeah, he just told them where they were in the multiverse and that they have the Master Weaver. And since the Master Weaver is such an integral part of utilizing the Web of Life and Destiny, the Electros are going to want him bad. And so likewise, the comic ends as Billy states that the Electroverse is going to send as many people as they can, as we see an army of Electros gearing up and ready to go, with the battery being funneled through all of them. So, yeah, that's where the issue ends. So, apologies if I stuttered or wound up kind of stumbling over my own words here. That was not intentional, I assure you. But, so my thoughts on the issue. This one very much is more action-packed, so to speak, which I guess is something we can say for all the other issues. But what I do like too is again is seeing the Spideys on every side adapting to the lots that they currently have. While the Web Warriors have been kicked out of Loomworld, they're still doing the best. They're still trying to make the best out of their situation and trying to think of ways of getting a hand on the Electros. And so they're following whatever leads they can in order to get on their case or to get on them. Case in point, Black Cat. Because, well, hold on one second. Sorry, I had to collect myself. But anyway, yeah, the case in point, Black Cat. From what Lady Spider is able to tell them, the robbery that she was distracting Lady Spider from was something that seemed to have something to do with the Electros, and so they follow that lead back to Black Cat, who does confirm, albeit unintentionally, that the Electros were the ones who sent her on the mission. While she may not know anything about what they're doing, the little intel that she does provide is able to give the Spideys an edge, as the reward that she got for helping the Electros was a necklace that, as Ham pointed out, had a tiny Electro, which they are able to utilize to power that communication device that Pavitr was able to create. So I do kind of like that. It again showcases them trying to think outside the box and work around it. And likewise, we see that in a similar way with Gwen and Ben, as Gwen knows that she can't reach out to the rest of the team, and likewise she has no idea what they're doing as she can't communicate with them. She is still trying to find backup in any way that she can, and since she knows that since she was told that Loom World was lost and she has no idea what the fate of the Web Warriors are, of course she probably goes to whatever she can get her hands on. She wants to get any allies that she can, and so she goes to Earth. She goes to the MC2 universe and recruits Spider-Ben, which again goes back to one of the reasons why I like the Web Warriors comic. It allows us to peek back in with these Spideys that we were introduced to in Spider-Verse, and we get to see more of Spider-Ben doing his own thing. I like that we get to still see him doing Spider-Man stuff after he's technically retired, so to speak. Like, he's now living happily on Earth 982, but he's also still Uncle Ben. And if the Spideys of the multiverse need his help, he'll go in and give it, because he's still a superhero. He's still Uncle Ben, and he knows that if they need help, he'll gladly do. He knows if they need help, it must be something serious, and he's willing to lend a hand now. As he's gotten his zest for life back, and I do like that. I like that he's got that drive back. So it is still cool to see him kicking ass and helping Gwen when they raid the Electroverse's lab that has all the Otto Octaviuses in it. Which I actually really like that. Again, the issue continues showcasing something that I really like. The interaction between the Spideys. Again, they're little moments, but they're still nice. And we get, one of my favorite moments, or the 3 moments in this comic that I think stood out, are one, when Gwen and Ben wound up raiding the Electroverse's lab that had all the Doc Ocks. Pavitr, after the Web Warriors get home and he's working on the communications device, and the third one. And when the Web Warriors caught Black Cat. As all 3 of those moments do have some nice interactions between the Spideys that are actually pretty humorous and good for building team dynamics. Case in point, for when Gwen and Ben raid the Electros, when Gwen gives her big speech, it's just kind of the corniest shit you can hear about freedom, like break off the shackles of your oppressors and all that crap. And after she just cries out freedom, Ben just kind of looks at her like, "What are you doing?" It's a little minor moment, and then what makes it even funnier is that after Gwen makes the speech, immediately the Doc Ocks attack the Spideys, and Ben has to kind of say, "You know that Doc Ock's usually the villain, right?" I like that. It's just kind of nice, and just kind of a nice little it's a nice bit of mood whiplash, especially with how victorious Gwen thought of a victory this was. It was nice. It's funny. Then likewise, we got a little bit of, likewise, when Pavitr builds the communication device, there's a brief moment where Spider-Ham comes in and just kind of sees what he's doing, and Ham talks about how he and Pavitr are similar. They have a lot in common, and Pavitr kind of somewhat says he agrees with the sentiment, and how he wants to share with Spider-Ham something one of his mentors taught him when he was at university. Take a shower. Again, I don't know why. I just find that humorous. It helps remind you that these are still a bunch of alternate Spider-Men, because they're jokers, they're weirdos, and they just kind of like to mess with each other. And then finally, again, when they catch Black Cat, we get a nice little moment, or not really nice, but kind of an amusing moment, where after the Spideys are interrogating Black Cat, on the sidelines, Noir and Mayday are just talking, and Noir advocates for torturing Black Cat, because apparently he does that. Yeah, I think he'd be a little bit more hesitant because he does know Felicia Hardy, or at least his world's Felicia Hardy. But then again, he's also had experience with the multiverse, and he's fighting alongside many alternate versions of himself who are almost nothing like him. So maybe you can get the idea. So maybe he got the idea of, well, maybe they're not all trustworthy. So I don't know. But again, at the very least, you think he'd have some kind of thing, or at least some kind of sympathy. But either way, Mayday does say, "Don't talk like that. It makes me want to hurt you." Again, it's somewhat amusing, though. I feel like maybe it's a little too harsh for Noir, but whatever. He was also the guy that advocated for killing the version of Peter who had an allergic reaction to a spider bite when he mutated into a giant spider. So, whatever. What do I know? But those are kind of some nice things. But again, I do like seeing this. But again, going back to how the Spideys are still trying to think outside the box to take down the Electroverse. What makes on the Spider-Gwen side of things, I do like how she is trying to be smart. She knows that even if she could reunite with the team, they can't take on the battery as they are. Again, he's a literal living electric monster comprised of the minds of thousands of Electros from across the Electroverse army. So odds are if they want to take him down, they have to try and they have to try and get him in the kneecap, so to speak, kind of cripple him, so to speak. And in order to do that, they need to cripple the Electro army. And so that's what leads her to just thinking about, well, what if we just free the Auto Octaviuses? They're their source of intel, and they're how they map out the multiverse. If we can take that down, then the Electros will just be jumping across the multiverse blind. So I like that they take advantage of that. And yeah, the Doc Ock's turn on Gwen, but the plan is a success. Without the Doc Ock's being in the lab, the Electros are now flying blind across the multiverse, which is how Billy is able to get to lure the Electros to Earth 803, because they need someone to map out the multiverse, and who better than the Master Weaver? So again, I like how things kind of go in that regard. And speaking of progression, I do love the introduction of Octavia Otto. Again, it's kind of a minor thing as she's brought in at the tail end of the story, but the thing is, she sticks around. After Electroverse, she kind of sticks around and joins the Web Warriors. She doesn't do any fighting, so to speak, because, well, she's not a fighter. While she is an alternate version of Doc Ock, she has been bereft of her arms. You can see where the slots are supposed to be on her back, but there are no arms. She doesn't really work. She's not really offensive, and as such, she ends up becoming the science guy of the Web Warriors. They're woman in the chair, so to speak. And as a result, she ends up working alongside them to try and perfect their technologies, helping them out, studying the web, so on and so forth. And it's nice to see her introduction here. And yeah, well, for the most part, for this comic, all she really does is just provide exposition, saying, "Oh, I can help you guys out. Hey, that's a helmet that one of the more psychotic Doc Ocks are creating," and yada yada yada, blah blah blah. Ultimately, she just kind of is there to help, to give support in this issue. But this is her first introduction, and I do like the gimmick with her universe, as it does continue going off of the whole infinite multiverse thing. Every possibility that can exist will exist. And so I do kind of love the gimmick that in her universe, it's just everything is reversed. Last names and first names are swapped around, everybody is the opposite gender, and likewise, good is evil and vice versa. So I kind of like seeing that with her, and how she talks about how her relation to that world, to her world Spider-Woman, as in that world, Spider-Woman was evil. Although it also makes me wonder if they did a superior Spider-Woman thing in that world. But I don't want to know about that, because that would imply Octavia was turned into a villain briefly. But anyway, with that said, it also does lead to some more plot progression with Gwen, as while she's trying to make a getaway, she does end up finding the helmet, and from it, she's able to start figuring out a plan to take down the battery. So again, it does showcase that all the Spideys are trying to think ahead and are actively working on strategies to take down the Electroverse, because as we showcased, the Spideys can't directly take them on. The Electros vastly outnumber them and overpower them. So facing them head on is not a good idea. So if they want to take them down, they need to outsmart them. And likewise, that's what we see them doing. We see them luring the Electros to Earth 803 by promising them the Master Weaver in order to give Gwen a distraction. We see Gwen taking advantage of the Electroverse's means to try and cripple them by taking away their navigation, by getting rid of the Auto Octaviuses, since they were the ones mapping the multiverse and giving them information. And then likewise, even before the Web Warriors were able to rig up their communication device and lure the Electros to Earth 803, they were still trying to follow any leads they could, and through that they were able to catch up with Black Cat and were able to gain access to the necklace, which became an integral part in them being able to contact Gwen. So I like that. I do still like seeing that they're taking steps to try and keep everything moving and are acting smart. As we've seen in the previous issues, the Electros are powerful. If the Spideys versus one Electro might have been able to take them down, but likewise, as with Spider-Verse, their strength in numbers with the Electros. All of these, and Electro himself is still a very powerful supervillain. And so, having an entire army of this guy versus just a handful of Spideys, if they want to beat them, they need to be smart. And we see that continuously with the various Spideys, as they keep thinking of different ways to take the Electros out, or likewise just find a way to cripple them in certain areas, taking away communications, taking advantage of their hubris, taking advantage of their lack of communication to come after the Master Weaver and give Gwen a distraction, and likewise her thinking of a way to potentially take down the Battery. So or not take down the Battery without actually fighting him, so to speak. So I like that. It's smart. It's outside the box. It's good. It's just some good stuff. So on the whole, yeah, so overall, still a good issue, keeps everything going, and showcases the Spideys being smart, but staying on their feet, trying to think of ways to take down the enemy that doesn't involve actually punching them in the face. Overall, still a nice issue, and keeps everything going, and definitely sets everything up for the climax. So, yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. Again, apologies for all the stammering and kind of tripping over my own words, so to speak, but I hope, despite all that, I hope you're able to still enjoy the video, and tune in on Thursday as we finally are able to wrap up the Electroverse storyline and see just what the Spideys have up their sleeves to take down the Battery. So till then, hope you have a good evening. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you on Thursday. Take care.